Welcome to Sleepscape. If you enjoy this, you can like the video and subscribe for more. If there's a story that you'd like for me to tell, feel free to leave a comment. It helps more than you know. Now, let's get into it. In the town of Atchison, there's a narrow brick house sitting quietly along a residential street that over the last several decades became one of the most talked about paranormal locations in America. At first glance, the house does not stand out. It looks like many older homes throughout the Midwest. A modest two-story structure in a quiet neighborhood. Cars passing by during the day, porch lights glowing at night, children riding bicycles through nearby streets. But inside the house, former residents, paranormal investigators, and overnight visitors have described experiences ranging from subtle disturbances to violent physical encounters. And unlike many famous hauntings built around a single dramatic story, the Sallie House legend evolved slowly over time, through witness testimony, television appearances, paranormal investigations, and decades of people attempting to explain experiences they believe they had inside the home. The house itself dates back to the mid-1800s and is historically associated with Dr. Charles Finney and the Finney family. According to local legend, a young girl named Sallie was brought to the home suffering from severe abdominal pain. The story claims Dr. Finney attempted emergency surgery before anesthesia had fully taken effect. According to the legend, the girl awoke screaming during the operation and later died from blood loss. Believers would eventually claim her spirit remained inside the home. But despite how widely repeated the story became, there is no verified historical evidence proving a girl named Sallie ever lived or died there. Researchers have never confirmed the story through medical records, death certificates, or historical documentation. Some skeptics have even argued the legend may have gradually developed through local folklore and tourism promotion as Atchison embraced a reputation as one of the most haunted towns in Kansas. Still, stories surrounding the house continued spreading, and by the early 1990s, the Sallie House would become nationally known. In 1993, Tony and Debra Pickman moved into the home shortly after getting married. At the time, they were focused on ordinary things: work, family life, raising their infant son. According to later interviews, neither of them initially expected anything unusual about the house. But not long after moving in, Debra began noticing small disturbances centered around the upstairs nursery. She later described putting the baby down for naps, leaving the room, and returning to find toys moved into different positions than where she remembered leaving them. At first, the incident seemed minor. A stuffed animal turned another direction, toys repositioned across the room, objects gathered together differently than before. Individually, none of it seemed dramatic enough to immediately suggest something paranormal. The couple reportedly tried to explain the activity logically: exhaustion from caring for a newborn, forgetfulness, misremembering where things had been placed, an old house settling and making noise. But according to the Pickmans, the incidents continued happening while no one else had been upstairs. Debra also described hearing sounds coming from the nursery, while the room was empty. At times, she reportedly heard footsteps overhead while downstairs with the baby. And gradually, the couple began describing something harder to explain than moved objects. The atmosphere inside the house itself, especially upstairs. According to later interviews, certain rooms began feeling emotionally heavy. Not necessarily frightening at first, just uncomfortable. The kind of feeling witnesses later struggled to clearly describe. Several years later, investigators and visitors would report similar experiences inside the home. A sense of tension, uneasiness, the feeling that the mood inside the house changed depending on where you stood. As time passed, however, the claims reportedly became more aggressive. And according to Tony Pickman, the activity eventually became physical. Tony later claimed he was shoved unexpectedly inside the home on multiple occasions. At times, he alleged he was pinned down by an unseen force. He also described incidents where he felt pressure around his throat or chest while alone inside the house. According to later interviews and paranormal documentaries, many of the most disturbing incidents allegedly occurred near the basement and lower level of the home. The basement itself would eventually become one of the most discussed parts of the Sallie House legend. According to paranormal investigators and later visitors, the area reportedly felt different from the rest of the house. Heavier, more oppressive. Some claim they experienced nausea, anxiety, dizziness, or sudden emotional changes while standing there. But the most widely discussed incidents involve scratches appearing across Tony's body. Photographs taken during the period show long cuts and marks across the torso that the Pickmans claimed appeared suddenly and without explanation. Some of the scratches were relatively minor, others appeared significantly deeper. According to reports, several wounds were severe enough that medical attention was allegedly sought. These incidents became central to the national reputation of the Sallie House and were heavily featured in paranormal television coverage throughout the following years. Believers connected the attacks directly to the legends surrounding Sallie. Over time, the alleged entity associated with the home became publicly known as, quote, the man-hating ghost, unquote. The theory centered around the story of the failed surgery involving Dr. Finney. If the child spirit blamed a male doctor for her death, believers argued that hostility may have transferred toward men entering the house. Skeptics strongly disputed those interpretations. Critics argued the scratches could have resulted from accidental injury, stress-related behavior, psychosomatic reactions, or self-inflicted wounds intensified by fear and suggestion inside an emotionally charged environment. But according to the Pickmans, the emotional atmosphere inside the home continued deteriorating. Tony reportedly became increasingly angry, withdrawn, and emotionally volatile while living there. Sleep became difficult. Arguments increased. The stress inside the home reportedly intensified over time. And according to later accounts, the fear eventually stopped revolving around unexplained noises or moved toys. It became the feeling that whatever was inside the house was escalating. As stories about the home spread locally, paranormal investigators eventually began visiting the property. Then came national television exposure. In the 1990s, the case appeared on Sightings, introducing the Sallie House story to a national audience. The program focused heavily on the Pickmans' experiences, especially the alleged physical attacks involving Tony. And once the case entered television culture, the mythology surrounding the house expanded rapidly. Over the following years, the Sallie House appeared on programs including A Haunting, Paranormal Witness, Ghost Adventures, and later, BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural. With every investigation and television appearance, the theories surrounding the house became darker. What had originally been framed primarily as the spirit of a young girl gradually evolved into claims involving multiple entities and possible demonic influence. One detail frequently discussed by paranormal investigators involved a stain in the basement that some believe resembled the shape of a pentagram. Over time, speculation surrounding the marking contributed to theories that the house may have contained something beyond the original Sallie legend. Some investigators began suggesting the alleged child spirit could have been masking a more hostile presence altogether. Others believe the pentagram narrative itself may have evolved naturally through repeated paranormal retellings, internet discussion, and media amplification over time. Additional claims also emerged involving unexplained fires reportedly occurring during the Pickmans' residency. According to accounts surrounding the case, small fires allegedly broke out inside the home on multiple occasions, further contributing to the belief among investigators that the activity inside the house had become increasingly destructive. Modern paranormal investigations inside the Sallie House often involve infrared cameras, EVP sessions, REM pods, motion sensors, and overnight surveillance equipment. Investigators have reported hearing footsteps moving through empty rooms, whispers in hallways, snapping sounds, and voices allegedly captured during recording sessions. Some described hearing movement upstairs while no one else was on the second floor. One investigative group later claimed they asked how many entities were present inside the home. According to their interpretation of the recording, the response sounded like, quote, "several of us," unquote. Moments like that helped reinforce the belief among paranormal investigators that the phenomena associated with the house extended beyond the original child ghost legend. At the same time, skepticism surrounding the Sallie House also continued growing. Critics pointed out that paranormal investigations are highly susceptible to suggestion and confirmation bias. Audio recordings can be misinterpreted. Environmental sounds can gain meaning after repeated listening. And once a location develops a reputation as haunted, expectation alone can strongly influence how ordinary experiences are perceived. That tension between belief and skepticism eventually became the part of the Sallie House story itself. Because by the 2000s, the property was no longer simply a private residence connected to local rumors. It had become part of the identity of Atchison. Ghost tours began operating throughout the city. Visitors traveled specifically to investigate the Sallie House overnight. The property transformed from a family home into a permanent fixture of American paranormal culture. At one point, the house was even publicly listed for sale. According to reports, the property appeared on Zillow in 2016 with an asking price of $1 million before later dropping significantly in price and eventually being removed from the market. Today, the Sallie House remains active as a paranormal attraction. Investigators still spend nights there hoping to document evidence of something unexplained. Some leave convinced the house is genuinely haunted. Others leave believing the atmosphere, expectation, and decades of mythology surrounding the location are enough to explain many of the reported experiences. And in many ways, that uncertainty may be the reason the story continues to survive. Because unlike many haunting legends built entirely on folklore, the Sallie House evolved publicly through interviews, television footage, photographs, investigator reports, internet discussion, and ordinary people attempting to understand experiences they believed they could not explain. Even now, decades after the Pickmans first moved into the house, there is still no definitive answer for what actually happened there. No confirmed evidence proving Sallie existed. No verified documentation proving the surgery story occurred. No universally accepted explanation for the scratches, the voices, the basement experiences, or the emotional deterioration described by former residents. Just a quiet brick house in Kansas, and decades of people walking through the same rooms and describing remarkably similar feelings once they stepped inside.